Welcome back. What's going on, guys? We are finally back from the UFC break. It's been a while. It feels like it's been almost like 3 months, I got to be honest with you. I mean, thank God we had football transitioning in between. I hope you all had a great holiday. But this is a time of the year where usually I need a break. Usually I start to burn out a little bit. I start getting tired. It reflects in my work a little bit. You know, you try to cut some corners here and there, usually around, December, right before the break. I feel it, So I was looking forward to this break. But after about a week, I went back home to New Jersey, New York to see my family, to see some friends and stuff. But after about a week, I was like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm ready to go. So this has been the longest 3 weeks that I've experienced in a long time. You don't realize how much there's a certain sport or element or fiber that's a part of your life that when it's gone, you kind of feel lost a little bit. It's almost like me with the guitar. Like if I don't have my guitars, when I first moved out here, I didn't have my guitars for the first couple weeks. And I felt like I was missing something, like I didn't have my guitars with me. So that's kind of how I felt with these fights. We changed up a lot of things. As you guys know, this is a free show. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. It costs you nothing. It's free information. We put a lot of work into it. We obviously got a beautiful studio. We got a beautiful setup. We have a great production team. So definitely, at least subscribe to the channel. But we changed up a lot of things behind the paywall end of things. We got a brand new website that we just put up. A lot of new content I'm going to be doing. A lot of new nooks and crannies for the DFS end of it. New angles and optics for wagers. We are kind of going off into our own direction. As the years have gone on in the past couple of years, and I've been in this industry for a long time, I've seen just an influx of just people starting channels and starting websites and starting this, and it's like you kind of get lost in the muck, right? I mean, it's a lot of kids, a lot of people that have been watching it for 1 or 2 years, or they came along with the Conor McGregor era, and all of a sudden now they're providers and stuff like that. So we are trying to go in a different direction. We want people who truly have a love and passion for the sport, who want to learn, who want to be a part of our community. We have a great community, probably the best I've ever been a part of. A lot of sharp minds in there doing NFL, hockey, soccer, darts, everything. But from an MMA and boxing perspective, everybody in there is extremely, extremely like-minded. We're all sweating the fights together. There's never any fights in there. So if you want to be a part of a really, really good community, a great community, come check us out on the madlabmma.com. We have a private Discord as well that you will be linked into. It's just a great time. I mean, it really, really is a great time. We're doing a promo that we will never do again, and it ends on Saturday. It ends with first because we have to start it from point A and end it. So it's going to be, if you buy for the year, if you buy a subscription for the year, and we don't hit plus units by the end of the year, then you get 6 months completely free. And that is something that nobody's doing. No one's putting their neck on the line to do anything like that. We put our money where our mouth is because we're very confident in our product, and we know that you're going to love the product. So without further ado, let's jump into this card. We have a decent card. This is a card that I will tell you, this is like a good, let's get our feet wet card, Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. A little back history on these guys. These guys fought once before, and obviously, those of you who watch, it was a no contest. Ankalaev got him with an illegal knee, which was absolutely illegal. I think Walker could have continued, but they ended up stopping the fight and called it a no contest. So you saw a little bit of a boiling point with Ankalaev. He kind of came out and he was, started a little ruckus in the cage, which is totally outside of his character. This is a guy who's very stoic in his approach, the way he talks. I don't know what the fuck is going on in this office. Are we having an earthquake right now? I think we are. Yeah, I think we just had a little tremor here in Orange County, California. I just lost my train of thought. You heard that, right? Yeah. Like everything started rattling and the lights were rattling. Yeah, I think we just had a little minor earthquake here. Interesting. So with that said, you have a guy who, is very stoic as an approach, like I said. What brought this boiling point on was not this Walker fight. It was the fight before. The fight before where he fought Jan Blachowicz and it was a draw, where it absolutely was not a draw. I do believe Ankalaev did win that fight. So this is just like a build-up, a slow burn, where it came to the point where he really believed in his heart, like, The UFC doesn't want me in this spot. The UFC is doing everything in their power to maybe put me in certain spots, but not allowing me to grab that pinnacle. Almost like a lot of some of these fighters would say, even like Belal Muhammad would probably argue something like that. Or Leon Edwards before he got the title shot. But Ankalaev is sitting in the spot now where he's like, all right, well, all this can't keep happening. Like, I can't get a draw. I can't get a no contest and expect to keep getting these opportunities. So they're putting him in a really good opportunity again for this rematch with Johnny Walker on a main event spot, first, card of the year against a dangerous guy. I mean, Johnny Walker is dangerous. And the thing that makes Johnny Walker dangerous is his unpredictability and his athleticism. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely unpredictable. He's very long. He's very rangy. The only problem I do have with him, I have two problems with him, is he's very chinny. He can be knocked out. In the light heavyweight division, this is not a division where you can afford to be chinny. You need some semblance of durability. So that makes me nervous with him. Another thing is I don't like that he went to SBG. This is a guy who does have really good striking out of the gates. And to have him go to another predominantly striking camp didn't make too much sense to me. They made him more patient. They made him more calculated. Yes, I get it. But you need to go somewhere now where they're going to say, all right, we're going to refine your striking a little bit, but we're really going to add now onto your wrestling and your grappling and kind of well round out and sculpt your game, which I don't know why he chose SBG. They look from optics-wise that they're doing a good job with him, but it's because he really hasn't had to grapple that much. It's really just standing up and striking and showing his patience, showing his composure, and showing his maturity in striking, which is great. Ankalaev is a guy that can do it everywhere. This guy can take it to the ground if he wants to. He can stand and trade with you. And I don't think he's going to make a mistake. I think Walker capitalizes on your mistakes. I don't think Ankalaev is going to let that to happen. I think this is a spot where he's got a chip on his shoulder too. And a calculated fighter like Ankalaev with a chip on his shoulder, to me, spells danger for Johnny Walker. The 5-round fight, I do not think this goes to the cards. I'm going to take Ankalaev by way of KO. Next fight. Kape versus Nicolau. This is a really good fight. This is a rematch as well. This is a rematch where Kape lost a split decision to Nicolau when he first came into the UFC. Kape is an interesting character because this is a guy who came over from Ryzen, really, really good optics. The UFC loved this kid when he came over, and he just didn't produce. He just didn't produce. He looked like he was slow on the trigger. He was very, very hesitant in his approach with his fighting style. You just saw that wasn't Manel Kape fighting. It was not the same guy in Ryzen. He was holding back a gear. And you could say that about a lot of fighters. You could say that about, the Queen of Violence, Ariana Lipski. Same thing. When she came over, to the UFC, she had this stigma about her that she was just this nasty, violent, pressure fighter. And then when she came over, she just didn't look good. And it took her time. It took her time to kind of evolve. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. We're starting to see Ariana Lipski become a little bit better. Maybe she's not going to be this world beater contender, but at least she's starting to rack up some wins and she's starting to show, yeah, I do belong here. Where at one point in time, it didn't look like she belonged here. When Manel Kape, the same thing. It looked like he did always belong, but it looked like we jumped the gun on him a little bit. So what happened is they put him against Alexander Pantoja. He loses that fight. They threw him to the dogs because they had this big promise for this kid. So you throw him against Pantoja in his debut. Then they put him against Nicolau. He loses that fight by split decision. So he was coming out of the gate 0-2. The UFC said, look, we got to back up on this kid a little bit. Yeah, he does got talent, but we're going to ruin him. So let's give him some more formidable competition. So that's exactly what they did. They gave him some more formidable competition. He ended up winning fights against Zumagulov, Dvorak, Dos Santos, Osborne, fights that he should have been fighting right out of the gate. He shouldn't have been fighting Pantoja right out of the gate. And he won those fights. So here he is now. He looks like the guy that we expected to see. And here he is now in his rematch against Nicolau to try to make things right and try to right the ship. Nicolau's a tricky guy because this guy is very well-rounded. He's got good power. He's got good grappling. He's pretty well-rounded. He's tough. The only problem with him is this guy is chinny. This guy can be clipped. This guy can be, knocked out, put on Queer Street, any which way you want to say it. And he puts himself in these positions. He tends to get a little too reckless where he will tie his combinations together for a little too long. Like, I'm one for punches and bunches. I always preach that. You got to throw punches and bunches. You have to have a setup shot, and you have to have shots to follow. You always got to follow up. But there is a point in time where you could follow up a little bit too much. And when you chain those strikes together a little bit too much, you're asking for an adjustment on the other side and somebody to clip you to knock you out. And that's the issue I do have with Nicolau sometimes. He does employ really good kicks, good leg kicks. He will start working them right out of the gate. But once he starts tying his punches together, he kind of just moves forward and he ties them together for, 1, 2, or 3 reps a little bit too long, which gives a very good sharp counter striker an opportunity to capitalize on something. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen here. I think Manel Kape's going to capitalize on something. I think Nicolau's going to try to take him down. In the first fight, if you saw their first fight, he had great success taking him to the ground. Then as the fight went on, he started to dial that in. He started eluding the takedowns, keeping it on the feet, and he started coming back and picking Nicolau apart. Lost a split decision, a little too late he got going, but I still do think he actually did win that fight. So that's what I'm expecting here. Listen, both of these guys obviously got better, right? Nicolau got better too. But the fact of the matter is I think he understands Nicolau's path to victory towards him is going to be the takedown. So I do think he did work on that. I do think he's going to have that adjustment in his pocket to be made a lot sooner than he did in the first fight. Coming off a loss to Pantoja, going back in, trying to get the dub, not going 0-2. There was a lot of nerves there. He wasn't pulling the trigger. He's a lot more fluid of a fighter now. I think you're going to see a different fight here, and I think Manel Kape's going to win by knockout. Next fight. Old man Jim Miller versus Benitez. This is a really good fight. And, those of you that know me know that I trained with Jim Miller, for a long time back in the day. And this is a kid who I always knew he was going to make it, right? I always knew Jim Miller was going to make it to the UFC. There's always that one guy in the room with you that like that's the guy, and Jim Miller was the guy in our room. There was just something about him. It wasn't his personality or anything like that, because it's not like he's got this great persona. It was just his ability. It was his abilities on the mat. Like, this kid was a light guy that when he got on top of me and I closed my eyes, it felt like there was a 220-pound kid on top of me. Like, he had very good weight distribution. He had very good grappling. The only thing that he did lack back then was striking. He really didn't have hands. He was all really predominantly grappling and wrestling. But he was tough, back, when I trained over in that area, that was just all like farm strength, just like, that South Jersey, strength that he had. And I always knew he was going to be good. His brother was good too, but his brother was not as good as Jim. Never thought in a million years that he would be here today. Never thought in a million years that Jim Miller would be this legend of the game. And it blows me away. Like, it really, really does blow me away that he's come as far as he's come. Obviously, you guys know he got stricken with Lyme disease, and it took away a couple years of his prime years. He said that UFC 300 was going to be his last dance. And after that, he was going to call it quits. Lo and behold, Jim Miller found his hands. Jim Miller started getting some knockouts. Jim Miller started winning some fights. Now it doesn't seem like UFC 300 is on the table for retirement for him anymore. He seems to have a hold of his Lyme disease. He seems to have a little bit new breath of fresh air and breath of life. He wants to fight. And a Jimmy Miller that wants to fight is a dangerous Jimmy Miller. He's taking on Gabriel Benitez. This is a guy who I respect a ton. This is a guy where any room that he walks into, they will tell you that he has the most powerful leg kicks in the room. One of the most underrated leg kicking games, and just kicking games overall in MMA. Maybe because he just as a fighter doesn't get the shine that he deserves. Nasty, nasty striker, nasty grappler. The guy's good all the way around. But this is another guy who does have chin issues. He's had shown chin issues in the past. He's not super old. Jimmy Miller's got half a decade on him. But Benitez wears it a little bit more. Benitez has been in some of these dragged out wars. He has been put to the canvas as of late. He is the athletic guy here. That's what scares me with this fight with Miller. Benitez, if he was smart, this is a guy who can use his leg kicking game, use his kicking game, but just stay away from Jim, use his speed, use the real estate of the cage, and kind of just for 15 minutes let Jimmy chase him. Like, that would be his game plan. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it. I think Miller's like locked in, to get a win here, to get a win at 300 and see, how far he could push this until he takes like his first beating when he decides to retire. I think this is Jim's fight to win. You know, I do. I think this is Jim's fight to win. I think he's got to push forward. I think he's got to put hands on him early. I think he's got to try to drag this to the ground. Jim Miller's a black belt under Jamie Cruz, who's a New Jersey legend back by me. But if this thing goes deeper and Benitez starts having, success with the leg kicks and chipping away on Jimmy's less athletic ability, it could be a dangerous fight, and Jimmy Miller can be the one, looking up at the lights at the end of the day. But I'm going to go Jimmy Miller. I'm going to go Jim Miller I'm going to say Jim Miller inside the distance. I'm not going to say Jim Miller by knockout or submission. I think Benitez's kicking game is underrated, but I still think that even though people look at Jim Miller's grappling game as his ace, I still don't think they realize how good it actually is. To be a black belt under Jamie Cruz is a real thing. Yeah, it's a real deal. So, and I've seen it firsthand. I've seen his grappling firsthand. Just because he's not the most athletic guy in a room doesn't mean this kid can't, easily take your back and strangle you. So I'm just going to go Jim Miller inside the distance on that one. But really, really good fight. I'd be careful with that one. This is one that I'm really looking forward to. We have two more on the main card. And this is probably the one I'm looking forward to the most, if I'm being quite honest. It's Simone versus Bautista. Both of these guys, Bautista more than Simone, were really on my radar early. Bautista's coming from the MMA lab. Those of you know I've had some good ties with the MMA lab. I got some good intel from those guys. And he's just a nasty character. Like, this dude knows how to fight. This guy's got good grappling. He's got long-rangey striking. He's got a very good mindset. There's just something about Bautista that, I have high hopes for him. I have high hopes for this kid. He has all the markings to be a really good fighter and work his way up to a really top contendership. And then, Ricky Simone is a guy who we know what he is, right? He is almost like a Merab Dvalishvili. This is a guy with an endless motor. This is a guy who looks to get takedowns. He's just like a wild, reckless child in the cage, and he knows what he's good at, and he's going to try to implore that at all costs. His last fight against Song Yadong, it didn't work out for him, and he got beat from pillar to post from Song Yadong, ended up getting knocked out. So my question for Simone and a guy with this fighting prowess is, how is he going to handle that? Is he going to come back in now, and is he going to be the same reckless child he was, or is he going to pull back on the trigger a little bit? Is he going to be hesitant? Is he going to question himself a little bit in this fight? And with someone like Bautista, you can't do that. Bautista is a guy who only boasts about a 56, 57% takedown defense, so he can be taken down. I'm expecting him to get taken down, but he's got some sneaky grappling. He's got some good transitions, and he knows how to get back to his feet. So this is either going to be a fight where Ricky Simone's going to be rinsing, repeating him throughout the fight, winning the important spots on a close round here or there. Ricky Simone, boom, gets the takedown, and then the Bautista backer's like, yep, there it is. He just gave him the round. Or Bautista's going to be able to transition out of these situations and possibly even get a takedown of his own, or two of his own, because he will implore takedowns as well. But it's an interesting fight here, it really is. But there are question marks for me with Ricky Simone right now. Like, how is he going to react off an like that was kind of an embarrassing loss for him. And listen, I love Song Yadong. I think he's a great fighter, but he kind of beat him at his own game. And that was crazy to see. And I picked Song Yadong in that fight. And I know a lot of people picked Ricky Simone, but I was expecting Yadong to win that fight just because he's the better all-around fighter. And if you have decent takedown defense and you have good striking in today's day, you're probably going to win the fight. The other way around, no. Grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is still obviously a real thing. It's a great tool to have, but it's not the is-all to end-all. Wrestling is as well, but if you could stop the takedown, you could keep someone on their feet. A lot less people have really good striking today than anything else. So if you have good takedown defense, if you could stay on your feet and you could utilize that to your advantage, chances are your chances of winning will go up drastically. So, but with this fight, it's like, how is he going to fight? Is he going to be hesitant? Is he going to try to? Sometimes these guys lose these fights, and what do? They completely alter their game, and they become more of a patient fighter. They try to find their hands. They try to take a different approach. They think that people know their blueprint by now, so it's like they try to change it up. And if you look at his past couple fights, to be honest with you, his takedowns have gone down drastically. He's been averaging 2 takedowns a fight for the past 3 fights, and that's not Ricky Simone. This is a guy who gets 7, 6, 7, 6. So they have gone down. You've seen a little bit of a decline in his approach. So I'm going to go Bautista here. I'm going to take a shot on Bautista here. I'm going to go Bautista by decision, but really, really good fight. I can see this fight going either way. Last fight in the main card, we're going to go Hawes versus Ferreira. If you're ever going to make a prototype of a guy, right, like an athlete, in football, you would say Herschel Walker, right? You would say Herschel Walker would be your prototypical athlete. Like if you were in the movie Weird Science and you were to build an athlete, right? You would build a guy like Herschel Walker, for football, or, take your pick. You know what I mean? In boxing, the same thing. There'll be guys that you would want to, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali had the perfect fighter's body. He wasn't overly jacked. But he was in shape. He had a loose body. He didn't have that crazy lactic acid buildup. Muhammad Ali had the perfect fighter's body. But when you're looking at like all around athletes, like Phil Hawes is a guy that if you were doing a weird science project, like he's a guy that you would probably he would come up on the computer. Guy's a freak athlete, like great shape, explosive, good hands, good grappling, good wrestling. Like the guy is a tremendous athlete. However, where the weird science equation failed him is his durability and his conditioning. It's just not to par. It's been the death of him. If this guy had really good conditioning and really good durability, and maybe a little bit better cage IQ, there's a lot of people that would be able to keep up with that, because the guy's athletic ability, the guy's somatotype, his genetics, everything are like right on key. You know what I mean? He reminds me of like a much smaller version of a Kevin Randleman, if you guys remember him back in the day. Like Randleman back in the day, he was a heavyweight, but Randleman was like just jacked, great wrestler, big legs, like very well proportioned. He reminds me of like a much smaller version of Randleman, but he's burned me way too many times. And he's fighting a guy in Bruno Ferreira who, historically just comes forward. He throws shots. Everything he throws, they have intent behind them. He's got a good motor. He's got very good duck unders where he's pushing you forward, and you go to counter him, he'll duck under you, and he'll take you to the ground, and he'll control you there. So he's got that well-rounded game, and I don't know how Hawes' gas tank is, going to last during that, and I don't know how long, if he can even go 15 minutes without getting caught with one of Bruno Ferreira's shots. There is something to be said about the better fighter doesn't always win the fight. And that's something that will always be true. Sometimes the better fighter doesn't win the fight. Hawes, genetically, athletically, is probably better than the majority of the fighters he steps in there with. But his conditioning and his chin and so many other dynamics are involved in fighting that you just can't bank on talent, genetics, athleticism, and such like that. That's what makes some of these dogs really tough. The guys like Darren Elkins, not a super athletic guy, but this is a guy who's a dog. He'll just keep pushing forward because that durability keeps him in there. Like, Roberto Duran back in the day, not the craziest athletic guy in the world. Marvin Hagler, not the craziest athletic guy in the world. They were very vanilla, push-forward fighters, but they had crazy durability, crazy pace, crazy conditioning that kept them in the fights. And then, and you have these guys who are much more athletic, but they don't have that dog. They don't have that dog in them. So this is a fight where I could see, Hawes being the better athlete, being the better, technician in there, the much better athlete. But Ferreira just has that dog in him where he's just going to keep pushing forward until he finds his spot. So, listen, Hawes, by talent, sheer talent and sheer athleticism should win this fight. He's just burned me way too many times. I could see him winning like 10, 11, 12 minutes of this fight, and then just either him just getting tired and backing up, or Bruno Ferreira catching him with something and knocking him out, and the night's over. So I'm not taking that chance anymore. I'm going to go Bruno Ferreira by KO. And that would be my official pick. If you want the rest of the fights, all the prelims and such like that, go to the madlabmma.com. Like I said, we're having that crazy special over there where it's really risk-free. I mean, you're going in there, you're subscribing for the year, and if we don't come up on plus units, which means if you don't make money with us during the year, we're giving you 6 months back for free. So definitely come and check that out. Subscribe to the channel, like, comment below, and I will see you next week.